Sabina, I started the recording already.
Perfect. Thanks, Dolores. Dolores, do you know if Molly's joining us?
No, she is not.
Okay. So Terry, we'll just give it a few minutes and I'll read the intro, and as I'm reading, if you want to take control and bring up your presentation, that'd be fine.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. Maybe I'll wait till just about 1 minute after before I start, because I see people are coming on like crazy now. And Dolores, you'll be able to keep a record of attendance for Molly. I think you guys you'll have something noted somewhere. Okay, we might as well get started then. I'm just looking at the attendance list, Terry, and just for your information, it looks like everybody that's in attendance is an infection control professional. So we don't have any capital planning or FM folks.
Okay.
Okay. And then I'm assuming it'll be okay with you as we go through the presentation if folks put their hands up, and if you have time or a good break, you'll stop and answer a question, or would you prefer they wait till the end?
Maybe to the end, because I don't think I can see hands as I'm doing the presentation.
Minutes at the end for questions, is that?
Yeah, we'll see how we go through the
go.
orientation and training. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
I'll try to make it 45 minutes.
Okay. So welcome. I'm just going to do a brief intro. I'm sure that a lot of the folks on this call already know who you are, but we'll make sure that everybody does. So I'm going to read the bio that I have here. So Terry how do I say your last name? Is it Sagert?
Sogert.
Sogert, sorry.
Sogert, yeah.
Sogert. Okay. I'm terrible with pronouncing names, so is the Safety and Training Coordinator for FM at HSC for the last 12 years. He's graduated from Red River College with a Certificate of Honors in the Occupational Health and Safety Program, and before that he worked in manufacturing industry for about 13 years, in which he was the co-chair of the Safety and Health Committee, participating in all areas of developing and executing the safety program there. His work has expanded to the role of Regional Health and Safety Director for the United Steel Workers of America, Local 1-324. Terry is also a Level 1 accredited firefighter, in which he went through the ranks with promotions to Captain, Deputy Chief, and Chief, serving the town of Minnetonka. Is that how I say that? Okay, correct. And surrounding areas. He's also studied and trained to be an EMT paramedic and worked with the Parkland Regional Health Authority. He's also been a member of the Provincial Safety and Health Specialist Committee and the Provincial Violence Prevention Advisory Committee for Healthcare Workers in Manitoba that developed the first ever violence prevention program in Manitoba. And here's the way I get to know Terry the most, is he's now currently a member of the multidisciplinary construction renovation maintenance working group with Winnipeg in cooperation with Shared Health. And so I'm going to turn it over to Terry now and let him share his presentation, and we'll move forward. Thanks for joining us again, Terry.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. I'm just going to get my screen going here. All right. So this presentation will take about 45, 50 minutes or so. There's the orientation piece that we're going to go through here, and then a bit of a training piece that we go through. So you can see on the first slide, this is the orientation piece, and then we'll to the next one here. So the intended audience is for infection prevention and control staff, capital planning staff, facility management staff, capital planning contractors, facility management service contractors, and the unit program and team managers. So the overview, we're going to go over some of the routine practices in healthcare, briefly go over some microbiologies and infections associated with the construction activities such as Aspergillus and Legionella. We're also going to look at the infection control risk assessment, or what we call the ICRA, and then into preventative measures before, during, and after construction. So routine practices are the basic infection prevention and control measures expected for all care for all patients at all times in any healthcare setting, and consistently follow routine practices reduces the risk of transmission, which you all should know. So here we go with the chain of infection. The infection agent, the reservoir, portal of exit, means of transmission, portal of entry, and the susceptible host. We all know if we break one of these chains, we can stop the infection. So hand hygiene is very important for all healthcare providers. Everyone needs to practice appropriate and effective hand hygiene, regardless of the work setting. It's the most important way to prevent the spread of germs. It reduces the number of microorganisms on our hands and involves cleaning all hands with either soap and water or alcohol-based hand rub. PPE will include gowns, gloves, facial protection, masks or N95 respirators as indicated for specific precautions, and eye protection. Signage, if any of the precaution signage is posted, discuss with your local area staff if any issues, concerns, project lead or supervisor, and do not enter the room unless you have been trained on the use of the correct PPE for that area. A little bit about microbiology. It's the study of microorganisms, and they include bacteria, fungi, viruses, parasites, but they're not always bad, and some are good. The bad ones could cause infections, and the pro about microorganisms is that they make good stuff like milk, cheese, yogurt, and my favorite, beer. Aspergillus, where is it found? In soil, dust, in animal, bird, mice droppings, stuff like that. And spores may be dispersed when floors, walls, or ceilings are penetrated during construction activities. Some spores could remain suspended in the air and travel with the air currents. And also, if you add moisture and heat to the spores, the result is fungi, mold, mildew, yeast, and rust. Legionella is a risk to healthcare facilities when the water systems become disrupted during construction activities. This could include removal, modifications, adding of existing and new ventilation and plumbing systems. Should be following the proper shutdown procedures as directed by the site or your project lead and the WHA operational directive for infection prevention and control for construction, renovation, and maintenance. So who's at risk? Occupants of healthcare facilities, including those with underlying medical conditions and receiving treatments and drug therapies. Those especially with weakened immune systems could become susceptible to construction, dust, and debris. So how do microorganisms travel during work? Well, during construction, they go through air movement. So we need to minimize and contain the dust generating activities and follow the IP&C guidelines. As you can see here in this picture, dust can move through acoustic tiles. Even for inspection, dust can cause disturbances. Above the ceiling work can travel to through the space, through acoustic tiles, and to the area below. It's a good idea every once in a while here at Health Science Center. We do vacuum our ceilings to get them clean. So if we're opening up any inspection or tiles for inspection, we have it clean up there. Mold, it's caused by water damage to the false ceiling here. It can be on building material and supplies. If materials are installed in the building, they should be protected from exposure to dust and moisture during the delivery to delivery site and unloading, storage, and constructions. You should inspect all the materials prior to bringing them into the hospital. Make sure they're clean, they're not damaged, they're not dirty or moldy, etc. Protecting our patients. We need to protect our patients from dust, mold, and contaminated building materials. So, and how do we determine what level of protection a patient needs? So we are going to look at the matrix that we call it, the Infection Control Risk Assessment Matrix. And you've probably seen this before, but we'll go into a little bit again. So the construction activity, you can see they have it broken down into 4 parts, type A, B, C, and D. And it all depends on what kind of activity we're doing. As you can see in the top, we're doing activities that require removal of not more than one ceiling tile, requiring a wall or ceiling panels to be open. That could be a type A. Painting but no sanding. Wall covering is a type A. Then we go into type B, where we get into the small scale, short duration activities that create minimal dust. And these could be activities that require access to chase spaces, sanding or repairing a wall in a small area of a wall. Then we go into type C, where we're getting a little bit more into demolition. So these are activities that generate moderate to high levels of dust, require demolition, removal of any fixed component, example like a sink, countertop, cupboard, removal of floor covering, ceiling tiles, casework, new construction, and minor ductwork. Type D is when we're going into full-blown high activity, high levels of dust, major demolition, construction activities, and this could include a new construction also. So the population risk group, we look at these, we look at the patients are in these groups, the areas. So group 1 is a very low risk. That's the office areas, unoccupied wards, public areas, laundry, soil, linen, physical plant operations. So that's a very low risk. We get into a medium risk when we get into some patient care areas, unless they're not listed in group 3 or 4. So outpatients, admission, just discharge unit, waiting rooms, autopsy, morgue. That's considered a group 2 with a medium risk. We get into group 3, we got a medium to high risk. This will include your emergency rooms, diagnostic imaging, dining areas, respiratory therapy, clean linen handling and storage areas. And then we get into group 4, which is the highest group. These are the very sick patients, operating rooms, anesthesia rooms, wards, and outpatient clinics with patient with AIDS or other immunity deficiency diseases. So what do we do once we get the 2 groups together? Well, we look at our preventative measures, ICRA, and then we see what we have. So if we have a type A construction activity and a low patient group, you got a what we call a preventative measure 1. So that would probably not need hoarding. And then you get into, if it's a type B, we go to a medium, we get into a type 2 preventative measure. Type C, when we get into the high and higher, this is when hoarding is very important and that we don't let dust, try not to let dust out of the area. So this is from the operational directive. You should follow the WHA operational directive, infection prevention and control for construction, renovation. Canadian Standards Association, or the CSA standards for infection control during construction and renovation of healthcare facilities, as referenced by the operational directive. Right now we're on CSA Z317. 17, that's the one that we're using at the moment. The project site supervisor, the manager of the facility management service, the unit area manager, and the ICMP will work closely together to identify and reduce the infection risks. And the operational directive defines work as projects that require level 3 or 4 preventative measures. This means the ICMPs are to be engaged from the beginning of the project planning. It's very important to get your multidisciplinary team together, which includes ICMP, program managers, capital planning, safety, occupational health, just so we can all get together and make sure the job runs smoothly. NICRA review is to be done if the scope of work changes. As we know, all jobs don't always run as smooth, so some scope needs to be changed. So once the scope changes, ICRA review should be done. Work extending outside the defined work zone needs to be assessed as well. So you need to look at what's above you, what's below you, what's to the right side, what's to the left side, just so we're not letting dust migrate or having construction workers go through these areas. And also ICMP may stop work if there's a failure to adhere required preventative measures, and they need to be corrected immediately. Also, we need to have a contingency plan that must be in place to address planned and unplanned interruptions to major services. Then may need some alternate arrangements, such as water. If the water's shut off in that area, there needs to be toilet access, drinking water, also ventilation, airflow, air filtration that needs to be done. There's designated responsibility for cleaning of the work site. So if you have an environmental cleaning services or housekeeping, they need to be in contact so they can do cleaning at the end and after the hoarding is taken down. And also day-to-day routine site cleaning must be performed, just so we're not dragging dust out of the work site. As I said before, startup meeting must take place and involve capital planning, facility management as required, infection prevention control, the contractors, and the managers of the site. This is where the lines of communication are established, and that's very important in doing construction. Before the start of the project, an ICRA must be reviewed as it informs precautions necessary to meet the operational directive. There we go. So this is the training part. This is fairly a fairly large PowerPoint. I know this is being recorded, so you can go back and look at it again. Some of the parts of this training I will go over fairly fast. It's the end part that I want to do a little bit more time on. So we'll go through this right here. So again, the intended audience, as you can see up there, the same as the overview. And then we go into the written procedures. We've already talked about these two, so I won't go into much of that. And the purpose is to ensure infection prevention and control guidelines are included in the planning and implementation of work throughout the Winnipeg Winnipeg Health Region and Shared Health to reduce the risk of health care associated infections due to construction, renovation, and maintenance. There are some responsibilities, and we'll go through these fairly quickly. Capital planning is to ensure the project bid documents and control contracts include specifications for IP&C measures. So they need to understand that they need to actually read Z317. Bid documents shall include phasing and lines of required hoarding. It shall notify IP&C of any significant changes of scope work that might impact IP&C and report completion of work to the manager or designate. Facility management, or FM, is to plan, implement traffic restrictions to the work site, notify the manager or designate and IP&C of any planned disruption to services, ensure work is completed prior to pre-occupancy, and report completion of work to the manager or designate. Infection prevention and control, the responsibility is to assess the work and to determine preventative measures for all work in accordance or in align with FM, or the construction people, the contractors, to review the work area prior to commencement of work and provide any comments and clearance that the area is safe for work, and attend work-related meetings as required. Also, to plan for potential disruptions of services during the course of work, ensure IP&C project contact, or PC, and worksite contacts are established, review worksite and suspected breaches, and determine the frequency and schedule for inspections with the project coordinator. The team manager, program manager, unit manager, they also have some responsibilities. They need to consult with IP&C if clarification is required, work in collaboration with facility management, capital planning, and infection prevention and control, identify patients potentially affected by the work, keep unauthorized persons out of the area until formally advised by the project contact, and communicate with the PC if any work in the work area is found in the patient care area. Worksite cleaning, we went through a little bit of this already, but it's very important to always keep your worksite as clean as possible. All right, so once again, we already went into this a little bit. The construction activity, the areas of the population risk group, we won't go over this again, and then the preventative measures, as you can see here. So facility management, this is before construction. Facility management will work with the area unit manager and staff for preventive measures 1 and 2, where FM work falls in preventative measures 3 and 4. IP&C will be involved in planning prior to the start of non-emergency work. Now, before construction, you need the project manager to identify the essential services as the water supply, electricity, ventilation services that could disrupt, and appropriate measures to address the disruption. For example, in some cases, it can be necessary to provide alternative water sources, as we talked about before, for the domestic water supply if it gets disrupted. The healthcare staff shall collaborate to minimize occupant exposure by identifying high-risk patients who might need to be temporarily moved away from the construction area. There has been times where we've worked in wards where we thought the patient population was a lower population, and then we discovered through meetings that there was one patient in there that was highly susceptible. So it's very important to talk to everybody before the work is getting done. Preventive measures 2, in addition to PM1, IP&C in conjunction with the project manager shall determine a safe route for the transportation of clean or sterile supplies and equipment away from the construction area and establish a traffic pattern for construction workers to avoid patient care areas. We don't want these construction people walking just willy-nilly through construction or non-construction areas into patient wards. Also, in addition to establish water temperature set standards for the healthcare facility, and this is in CSA Z317. Determine whether domestic, cold, hot, and recirculation water lines will be affected by construction, and the assessment shall include shut off or interrupted using existing valves and isolate by additional valves. As you can see here, there was more talking about the water system, how to sanitize the lines, using hyperchlorinated water and flushing lines that could be. IP&C shall ensure an effective surveillance system is in place to monitor patients for Legionella during soil excavation. So if you're doing soil excavation as they're doing right now in St. Boniface Hospital, putting in their new ED, they should be checking for stuff like this. Drawings. Drawings are always a good thing. Then shall be obtained for the layout of the ventilation systems. That's they supply air to or exhaust from. Ready to close outlets, modify performance, shut down systems, or make other changes to the HVAC system. Preventative measures 3 gets a little bit more. So you need to follow 1 and 2 should be followed. And then we get into preventative measures 4, where 1, 2, 3 shall be followed for that part. So once we get into the construction, there are certain preventative measures that we need to do again. So during the constructions, maintenance staff or constructors shall be responsible for dust control. A visual inspection has been completed. They need to close access panels and replace displaced tiles. They also need to clean the work area with a HEPA filtered equipment, vacuum if necessary. Also during construction, maintenance staff or constructions performing plumbing work, they need to look at their gaskets, make sure they're made out of material that's not going to support growth of Legionella. Ensure faucet aerators are not installed or used, to maintain a dry work environment at all times, and any scheduled water interruption during periods of low user activity should be tried to do. During construction for environmental services, report any discolored water and water leaks, and ensure patient care equipment and supplies are protected from dust exposure. Also, you can see dust control to water mist surfaces while cutting if possible, or HEPA drills, or anything that will contain the dust as dust doesn't escape from the work area, sealing any plumbing penetrations, any electrical outlets, and any other sources of potential air leaks in the construction area. Also, sealing any air vents, place walk-off mats or sticky mats, very commonly used here at Health Science Center. They just lay on the floor and they trap dust from the shoes or any equipment that's being brought in with wheels. Need to wipe off the wheels. Just make sure everything's clean when it's leaving the area. Building ventilation systems, if possible, you can disable the ventilation system until the project is complete. Alternatively, you can get an engineering analysis to be performed to ensure that the fan systems continue to perform their intended function and the operation of the HVAC system is not compromised. Once again, we go into some plumbing preventative measures too. Always again, a dry work environment, reporting any leaks or walls through the walls or substructures, and making sure that the water line shall be flushed before reuse and after new plumbing has been installed. Again, some more preventative measures for 2. I'll just take a little bit of, so you can read this slide here. We are going to the silver copper ion treatments. We do have these in HSC. So when they're doing the water, they need to superheat it to 70 degrees Celsius or hyperchlorinate it to get all the Legionella out of the water lines. Site maintenance, place debris in covered containers. Now, we talked about this a little bit already. Cover it, moisten it with a sheet before transporting during your facility. Clean the area with a HEPA filtered equipped vacuum cleaner, wet mop, or both. And again, try not to dry sweep in the area. Again, preventive measures 2, we're just going through again, covering supplies, removing debris, use of permanent exhaust. You may use the permanent exhaust if the exhausting air from the construction zone via portable negative air unit only under certain conditions. Most of the time you like to exhaust the air to the outside. Sometimes it's just not possible to do that. Again, more of the exhaust, performing an engineering analysis to make sure that it's working properly and monitored and, if possible, alarmed if the exhaust fan or fans break down. And this last slide, if the conditions outlined in previously cannot be satisfied, then the steps outlined in preventive measures 3 shall be followed. So we're going to go into 3. It's a lot of the same thing with the dust control, except now we're getting into the hoarding. So to erect impermeable dust barrier from floor to underside of deck, including areas above the false ceilings. Now this is can and will be a problem for most facilities because above the ceiling tiles you have lots of mechanical, lots of electrical, lots of pipes running through there. So it's very difficult sometimes to hoard to the true ceiling. Your dust barrier shall remain in place until the project is complete and the area has been cleaned thoroughly and inspected. After work is complete, remove the dust barrier carefully to minimize spreading of dust and debris particles that have adhered to the barrier. So a good wipe down is good. Use of impermeable vessels to contain contaminants. So these could be a one-piece exterior shell. So what we have in HSC, we call them isolation cubes. They're all contained. We roll the top up to the ceiling part. The guy gets inside of the container he has a negative air pressure if needed in there, opens up the ceiling tile, does his work, comes down, and they're very easy to use. Again, some more of the minimization of dust generation, vacuuming electrical systems, removing and putting on protective clothing before enter patient care areas, sealing all the gaps and that no air leakage is coming from the construction site. Sealing the windows, doors, intakes, sealing around areas housing patients who are most susceptible to infections from the construction areas. Lots of time you want those people moved out of the area if possible. Now we're just getting into more of PM3s, negative air pressure if possible. We already talked about this. It should be at 0.03 inches of water column and documented. We need to maintain the negative pressure within the construction area by using a portable HEPA filtered equipment air filtration units that include pressure gauges and an alarm if possible, and to monitor the filters and replace if clogged. Some more about ventilation. I'll just give you a second to read over this slide. And more about portable HEPA air-filtered air units. Basically just talking about keeping them clean. The HEPA filtered air units, they need to be certified at the beginning of work or at least every 12 months. And this shall be documented. This will be done by your FM people, hopefully, that they put that HEPA filter through a test. Ventilation systems in PM3 again, the work area shall not be discharged. Work area air shall not be discharged to areas occupied by groups 3 and 4. So that means we really need to try and ventilate to the outside or in another area, not going into those groups. We just can't take the chance of these people getting sicker and getting an HAI from being here. Some more about the ventilation systems. So preventative measures 4, you need to follow PMs 1, 2, and 3, and the following requirements. It goes again through all the dust control preventative measures. So you can see here, ensure all access shall be from the outside occupied, or construct anterooms at access points to the construction area if access is from within the facility, especially in PMs 3 and 4. Walk-off mats, should have walk-off mats there, sticky mats. Ensure constructors leave the construction area through the anteroom so they can be vacuumed with the HEPA filter, and wear protecting clothing that is to be removed each time they leave the construction area if there's no vacuum. So bunny suits, Tyvek suits, clothes like that. Dust control, well, we went over dust control lots. We need to repair the holes as soon as possible, ensure the ventilation systems are working properly in adjacent areas, remove barrier walls and use short-term protection to minimize environmental contamination during removal. Before substantial completion and occupancy, the construction shall obtain an infection control checklist from the multidisciplinary team, and once all the checklist items have been satisfied, the construction shall complete the checklist and return it to the MDT. Detailed inspection shall be performed to confirm all the checklist items has been satisfied. Now this goes after construction, so PM1, it basically goes through, you need to do a final inspection, review everything, ensure the area is clean, before any occupants are to be readmitted to the completed construction area. The environmental services people need to be sure the ducting is clean, surfaces are wiped down, any report of discolored water or any water leaks need to be reported to maintenance or infection control. All the requirements that were set out in PM 2 and 3 shall be met. And then in addition, before the construction area is completed or occupied, any portions of the infection control plan still in effect shall be reviewed by the MDT. If necessary, such portions shall be incorporated into the healthcare facility's ongoing operating policies and procedures. So the next few slides we have here are some examples of major construction that we did in Health Science Center. So this is a, it was in a hallway area. We were actually building a new cafeteria downstairs at HSC here. So we determined it was a risk group 1 because it's not in any patient areas, and the type C construction because it was going to take a long time. So we wound up with preventive measures 3 on this one. So hoarding was used, HEPA vacs were used, and air filtration systems were used. This is just another shot of that area there. Here's another example that we had. This was what GH5 in Health Science Center, where we have some sicker patients. So we did the infection control matrix. We came up with risk group 2, construction activity B, and so we had a preventive measure 2 for that one. These are some older pictures that we did before. You can see here we are putting up some hoarding. So before we had to put up the actual hoarding, we had to hoard in the hoarding. Just some more samples here. You can see it takes a little bit of work to set up the hoarding, especially when you're doing major renovations. Our site access to that area. This was a very interesting project we had to do at HSC. This was in the center of the SICU. We had to take out some millwork and replace the millwork. So we hoarded this area in. As you can see here, this was the entrance to the area. We had our walk-off mat. We had negative air pressure going in, and we found out that the ventilation system for this one, as you can see, this was directly to the outside, so we could use that directly to the outside for our negative pressure. You can see on the other side here, just the hoarding part. We covered it in plastic first, and then we put a solid piece of plastic around it just so it wouldn't get banged or torn or ripped. Just some more of those pictures there. This was in what we call a rotunda. They're just doing a small job out in the public area. We just wanted to contain the dust. We really didn't need to do HEPA vacuum or anything like that. We just wanted to contain the dust. So these are some scenarios that we have here. I know we only have a couple minutes left. I'm only going to go through a couple here, but this will help you going through an ICRA. So we're going to just take the scenario 1 here. It's just a patch and paint in a general hallway. But some questions to ask yourself is like, what area am I in? What kind of patients are in this area? Are they ambulatory? Are they immune compromised. What is the work that we're going to be doing? Is it inspecting? Is it repairing? Or are we replacing? How long is this work going to take us? Is it going to take us? Or what are the hazards? So these are just questions you need to ask yourself when you're doing these. Excuse me. So some more questions to ask yourself. Will I be creating hazards? Will I be creating dust? Will I be creating mists? What other hazards will I be creating when we're starting to do this work? And will the work disrupt anything above, below, or adjacent? And we talked about that a little bit before. So turning off the water supply, is that going to affect any of the other units above, below, or beside you? The same with migrating dust. And have a portable tent, an isolation cube. You could use 6 mil poly, or you could use hardboard. The hierarchy of controls. So in the safety world, we go through what we call the hierarchy of controls. So the first one we use is, can the hazard be eliminated or substituted? So can we eliminate the dust by using a HEPA vacuum on a drill? It could be as simple as that, or it could be as simple as if they're working in a washroom in a patient room, can they just close the door and maybe put a towel at the bottom of the door so nothing comes out of the door of the area while they're working in? Can you use engineering controls? Can the work be modified? And that's something to ask. Administrative controls. So that goes to the time of work, the work practices, and your policies. Sometimes you just can't do the work during the day. It needs to be done at night when there maybe is no patients, no staff around. And then the use of PPE. All right, once you go through all those questions again, you go through, where am I working? What work is being performed? So in this scenario, just painting and patching in a hallway, it came up as a risk group 1. So now you can do that for every scenario. Here we've got another scenario that we have, changing a light fixture in a birthing room where the patient cannot be moved. So, questions you ask yourself again, go through all these, and does the light really need to be replaced? Scenario 3 here, and these are just certain scenarios. It just gets your mind thinking a little bit, like servicing a toilet in the echocardiography patient room. What questions are you going to ask yourself there? And then we go into scenario 4. Same thing. Sure, we all get what I'm trying to go after here. I'm just going to go to the end here. Sorry. So out of all this, now it's your turn to take all this back with you, implement it into your areas, think of a real scenario, and just when we're doing these, we need to keep in mind the patient safety, the worker safety, the staff safety, and the visitor safety. The patients come here, they may be very sick, they don't want to be here. Nobody really wants to be in a hospital unless you're working here. Sometimes you don't even want to be here when you're working here. But we need to follow all these and keep these in mind just to ensure the safety for our patients, that they don't come out of the hospital with an HAI from construction. And that's all I have right now. So that was the overview and the training part. Is there any questions?
Thanks very much, Terry. I just wanted to ask one question that I probably should have led with. I did post in the chat that the link to the facilities management page that actually has these presentations posted there for everyone. And it's my understanding that that's a page that can be accessed by contractors as well. And is it the first presentation that actually we provide to contractors?
Yes.
Can you remind me? So
Yes.
all contractors should have had it by FM. I think it's FM that does the delivery, perhaps capital planning at times. We'll do that, go over that first presentation with each contractor at least once.
That's correct.
Okay. Just going to look for hands here to see if we have any questions. And thank you again for a wonderful presentation. Let's see if we have any questions from anybody in the group. I'm not seeing any. I'm not seeing any hands. I'm going to add a couple things because I've seen a few things as you were going along, and it was hard to not pipe up at the time. But I kept a little note here. So one of the most exciting things that I think we've changed recently, and I'm sure you can speak to this better than I can, Terry, is when capital planning or projects, bigger projects, the specs are being developed in all regional projects, the requirement for contractors to follow the CSA standards for IP&C and construction is written right into the contracts. And recently we just confirmed via Craig and Shared Health that now all the PCH projects that are being run independently through the PCH facilities, but the contracts actually flow through Shared Health, will now have that language written in as well, which basically changes the game for PCH in construction when they have contractors coming in. So that was a big win over the last little while. Did I miss anything, or did I say that incorrectly? Some of the language I get mixed up on.
No, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's one of the most recent. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good that we got the PCHs on board with this now. Yeah.
Yeah. So big changes for them and their projects. I think moving forward. So one of the things with this presentation will be to use it as an education tool for those folks as well, which I think will be a huge benefit. So thank you for that. We've recorded you. You're now going to go into our orientation bucket going forward. Lucky day. I'm just going to make sure there's no other questions from the group, and if not, we'll close here, and once again, we'll thank you for joining us. I'm sure this is just the first of many times that we'll be doing some construction education going forward. The last thing I'm going to do is a little bit of a plug for the group. There is construction audit tools that are available. The construction working group in Winnipeg has developed these tools. The goal of developing them is really to collect information and target our activities. So really completion of the audit tools both before, during, and after construction is really beneficial to everybody around the table because, you know, we'll often say, oh, we never do this, or we always have trouble with that. But this is a tool that's going to capture where those troubles are. I use troubles loosely. Challenges is probably a better word. It'll capture our challenges, and then it'll focus the working group's activities on coming up with solutions to some of that, or at least a bucket like of potential solutions where those around the table, including FM, Shared Health, occupational health and safety, and IP&C can actually start problem solving some of those situations, so we get some tools for everybody to use. So we're excited about those tools. So we hope that everybody will start using them more. And then we can start collecting all of that information so we can target our activities, because we're currently have no shortage of work or suggestions on the Winnipeg working group. So we have to really pick our priorities. And so I think those will drive some of our priorities going into the future. Okay. Anything else you have to say, Terry, before we go?
No, just thank you very much for having me doing this presentation. Hope it went over well. I see a couple thank yous in the little chat room. Thank you very much for having me. And take this information and spread it out to your colleagues, construction, constructors, FM people, everybody.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks again. All right. Everybody have a wonderful day. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Dolores, I think